Hello, mixtresses and mixters. This is mixtressrae. You're watching Mixtress Video. So, I am doing a total redo. A few of you may have seen that I had a video up for like a second last week that was this. Unfair comparisons between Shadowscapes and Dark Wood today, because I can't believe I haven't done it before, because I consider these two decks to be sister decks, and I can't believe I have not compared them against each other before. But anyway, I filmed this last week and I uploaded it. Like, everything was fine with my file, but when I uploaded it, there was like 3 to 5 minutes of just like frozen video and no audio, and then it just went back into the rest of the video once I uploaded it to YouTube. And a really kind commenter pointed that out, and so I immediately deleted the video, made sure that everything was fine with my file, which it was, so I re-uploaded it. And I don't know about you guys, but every time I upload a YouTube video, it takes hours upon hours. So I waited like overnight. It posted again. It got seen, 20 or so times each time I posted it, but it did the exact same thing again. So I guess there was something corrupted about the file that I couldn't tell whenever I was looking at it before uploading it, but hopefully that doesn't happen again. Okay, I'm probably gonna have to adjust the shot a little bit too. Okay, so I'm doing an unfair comparisons between two of my favorite decks ever today. So let's zoom in. So this is my first time using, I just got a new phone. So I'm using that today. So we're just doing a test. Like, of course, I still have my camcorder, which is probably going to be my preferred method of filming things. But I also have this. I feel like this is too much, though. This is like 1080K or something, which is not my thing. But I'm going to just go ahead and leave it for now. I may not have a choice to degrade it further unless I filter it or process it through, like edit it. That's what I was, unless I edit it. I mean, right now it looks really good, but I just don't think I want to start being a 1080p channel just because it takes so fucking long to upload videos as it is with my internet that, like, it would take probably at least twice as long. But for this purpose, looking at the imagery of my two of my very favorite decks, it will be really nice to see it in such high detail, which it looks great. Wow. It really does actually look beautiful. Okay, cool. So this is sort of a new camera test, just because, in the past I did use my phone quite a bit as well as using my camcorder. So I like to see what strengths each of those cameras has. So far I'm thinking that this looks really beautiful, but I never use 1080, and I think that this is 1080. Anyway, both of these are amazing Fool cards. Two of my very favorites. So far this video is really doing justice to the detail that is in Shadowscapes. I've had both of these decks. I've had Darkwood for about a year, which is I think just as long as it's been out almost. And I've had Shadowscapes for like 2.5, almost 3 years. So I've had a lot of experience with both of these decks. I have actually used Darkwood Tarot more because I have found that even though Shadowscapes, it looks to be like a very like airy, forgiving, beautiful, loving hug kind of color palette, it doesn't actually read that way. It's a very harsh deck. Just blunt honesty with Shadowscapes. Whenever I first started my Etsy tarot reading shop, I thought I was going to be using Shadowscapes for like love readings and stuff. And I did use it a few times for client readings, but it just did not go super well, just because you have to be ready. Like I have to have a pretty good rapport with a client to feel like I can bring out Shadowscapes. Or like somebody needs to specifically request Shadowscapes. Like if somebody requested it, I would totally use it, but you just need to be ready. With Shadowscapes, you need to be ready. So the reason why I think of these as sister decks is I think of Shadowscapes as air and water, and Dark Wood as fire and earth. Shadowscapes are fairies and mermaids, and Dark Wood is vampires and witches. So I just think of it as just sort of like the full picture of like what I look for in a tarot deck, really, together. And I don't really like use them together, but I probably should, because I think that they would work together pretty well. Wow, the detail that you can see with this camera is just blowing my mind right now. I guess that's what 1080 looks like. But I just don't want to get used to it, because if this video ends up being like 45 minutes long, it's gonna take like a whole day to upload. For some reason, I didn't notice until last night that there's a hand right here on the spinning wheel and the wheel card in Darkwood. Those like little details. I mean, that's not really a little detail, but I get overstimulated, and like there's several decks that I use all the time that I just see new things in all the time, and Shadowscapes is definitely one of those decks. Because I mean, you can really get lost in all the tiny little details all throughout every single card in Shadowscapes. And I think that Dark Wood is slightly more successful in that. I think that the thoughtfulness and the attention to detail and the time spent making the deck is probably, I think Shadowscapes wins on that front. But the artwork is not simple in Darkwood Tarot. It still has things going on, but it is simplified in comparison. Wait, we're not looking at Death. Where's Death? You guys are probably like yelling at me that whole time. Hello, where's Death? There. Since I did this last week, I guess I just kind of like got them a little out of order. But what I mean is, like, there's a lot to see in the imagery here, but it's not like so much that you really have to dig in. Like, especially with this particular card in Shadowscapes, the Death card, I don't know what to look at. I don't know what I'm trying to see. Like, I guess that this Phoenix human figure is what we're supposed to see as the death element, but I just wish it was a little closer. Love the Maleficent energy in the Temperance card. I'm just in awe of how much detail this camera is picking up, and it's not even having to like refocus all the time like my other camera does. One of my favorite Judgment cards of all time. Both of these, like whenever I was doing my sort of like picking my favorite card, which is just a project that I do all the time, but whenever I did it last week, the most recent time, Shadowscapes and Dark Wood, they both had like the most choices, like each one of them, like out of 78 cards, my very favorite depiction of a particular card was picked from one of these two decks, like 10 times each, something like that, maybe even more. Look at that. Path into the distance. This one is just like a little too chaotic for me. Like, I get the idea that like they're all so worried about like competing with each other that they don't see that the bunny is getting away. I get the concept, but it's just like so much going on. I would think that it was the 10 of Wands if it wasn't labeled, because of how much is going on and how overstimulated I feel looking at the image. I'm not actually saying much about the images. I wonder if Abigail Larson was influenced by Stephanie Pumanla's art or by this deck in general, because there are a lot of similarities, you know, like back in the Hierophant, I didn't even point that out, but both of the Hierophants in this deck being trees, and both of these being like, you know, energy of sort of someone conjuring up and sending up the wands. I still, after all this time, have trouble working with Shadowscapes. Like, looking through the deck like this, it's so beautiful, and I'm like, why don't I use it more? But whenever I have like a whole spread of these cards next to each other, there's just so much to look at that I get lost, and it's just too much. So personally, I would recommend, if you're having that same, if you have Shadowscapes and you're sort of having that same reaction to it, try to keep your spreads a little bit smaller with Shadowscapes, like, you know, 1 or 2, maybe 3 cards at a time. Mix and match with other decks that you have, maybe, or try. This is hard for me to do, so I can't really take this advice myself, but try not to pay attention to every single element, just like pay attention to what your eye is drawn to in each image, instead of trying to take in the whole thing, if that's something that's hard for you. Favorite Two of Cups ever. Look at them. Look at these beautiful lady trees. They're in love. Love both of these too. This is, did I pick this one as my favorite Three of Cups? I might have, because it definitely is up there. So many of these cards, when I compare them against each other, it's like, it depends on the day. Like, some days this will be my favorite Three of Cups, and some days this will, you know? So looking at them right now, a week after choosing my favorite card of each of the cards in the tarot, both of these decks have a lot of animal energy, which is important to me. I mean, I don't necessarily think about it beforehand, but if I get a deck that like doesn't really have any animals in it, I definitely notice, and it definitely bothers me. Love both of these. I love that there's like a Saturn symbolism up in the waves, because this is a Saturn card. I think of this as your Saturn Returns card. The Eight of Cups. Not super into either of these as a Nine of Cups. Like, I get the idea here that the cat is bringing you what the cat thinks you're wishing for. Like, I got it. All your wishes are going to come true. I got this dead bird here. But this one I really don't love. I know a lot of people love this card, and it's a pretty image, but just like it doesn't give me Nine of Cups energy, really. It really bugs me when I see a heteronormative looking couple in the Ten of Cups. Like, to each their own. It just bugs me because, like, I feel like there are so many opportunities for the heteronormative looking couple. You know, you could put them in the Lovers, you could put them in the Two of Cups. You know, if it was just in the Ten of Cups in a particular deck and it wasn't in those other two cards, I'd be okay with it. But like when a deck already has a heteronormative couple in one of those like major like family, lovers, you know, whatever love type cards, it just bugs me to see it elsewhere. So in the case of Dark Wood, there is a heteronormative looking couple in the Lovers, but there are animal families depicted in both Ten of Cups and then in Two of Cups. So at least that's a little bit better, but still, like, you definitely don't get any gay or lesbian love looking action in Darkwood Tarot. Whereas you do get the two girl trees and Two of Cups in Shadowscapes, but you don't get anything like that unless, I mean, like I said, whenever you're looking at a family of animals, it's, you know, gender is not really a part of that, in my mind anyway, but still, that is one. You know, there's definitely a diversity problem in a lot of tarot decks, but definitely in Darkwood. One of the reasons why at first I didn't get Darkwood was because of that reason. I don't really love either of these Knight of Cups, but I'm kind of picky about Knight of Cups. This is a pretty great king, though. He's all resplendent in his seaweed, and he has his turtle friends. Or tortoise, I don't know the difference. He's got a little... That's pretty great. Pretty great King of Cups. This is one of my favorite Three of Swords because I like that, like, the black blood that is being bled out is just very subtle. It's very subtle. This Four of Swords from Darkwood used to really bug me because, like, at first glance, I just see a guy looming over a girl. You know, it's very Sleeping Beauty action, right? And I get really nervous and my chest starts to tighten and, you know, trauma response. I get trauma response when I look at this card. But in the guidebook, you may even be able to tell with this super it's really hard to tell on the card itself, but in the guidebook you can see the imagery like full page, and you can see that her eyes are open and she's actually side-eyeing him. So she's getting ready to like fucking cut his head off if he touches her. So that's an interesting depiction for the Four of Swords, but I'm okay with it now that I know that her eyes are open and she is aware of what's happening here. So, like, if he actually does touch her, or she's just waiting for him to get close enough so she can lop his fucking head off. That's what's about to happen. So this one's great too. So you do really get that meditative, like divine rest sort of situation here. This is my favorite Five of Swords of all time. I think I say that every time this card is on screen on my channel. I say that because it just perfectly encapsulates how I feel about Five of Swords. I just feel like this is internalized misogyny. That's what I think. And I think that Five of Swords is about hurting others and isolating yourself through hurting others, but really hurting yourself in the process. So I think this is just, I don't know if Abigail Larson meant for it to be interpreted that way, but that's how I interpret it. This Six of Swords confuses me because this looks more like a Seven of Swords situation, because, you know, you see this person over here reaching out for the baby, and because of the color schemes, you think, okay, well, this person's taking this baby away from this person, but maybe it's a good thing. You know, I mean, if we're talking Six of Swords, we're supposed to think it's a good thing, right? But it just looks like a shady situation. And I don't think it's supposed to look like a shady situation in the Six of Swords. This is like one of the only, like, I really like the imagery in this card, but it just doesn't really give me Six of Swords. This is my favorite Seven of Swords. This one is one of the only cards in Shadowscapes that I don't really like, because I just feel like this is too dramatic of a peril. For Eight of Swords. Not a peril like clothes, but a singular peril. I really like this one though, because I feel like all of these creatures are there to help her, but she kind of has to reach out and ask for their help. Like I say every time this card is on screen, this is my favorite Nine of Swords. Both of these is one of those instances where I don't know which one of these is my favorite. Ten of Swords, on any given day, it could be one or the other of these two. Because both of these give me a sense of sort of dynamic dancing out of peril. Like she looks like she's sort of like levitating. Sort of like there's ecstasy involved in this Ten of Swords moment. And she's dancing, you know. I'm not super into the dudes in Darkwood Tarot, but the longer I have this deck, the more I make peace with the imagery. Like, just for those of y'all that maybe are new to tarot and you only have like, you know, a couple of decks, that's great. Like, you only need one. But one of the things that I will say that I didn't really realize at first when I started collecting tarot is I was looking for the perfect deck. That doesn't exist. As far as like perfection is concerned, like Darkwood Tarot gets pretty damn close for me. But there are still, there are like, I went through all my decks pretty recently and like counted the cards that I hate in each deck. And even this deck that I pull out all the time. I really, really love it. I would consider it a soul deck. But even with this deck, like there are a good like 5 or 10 cards that I really don't like. But whenever you use a deck a lot, you eventually make peace with some or all of those cards. Like some of them, it's just like it depends on how much you hate them and for what reasons you hate them. You might hate them forever. But sometimes you'll have a reading where a certain card comes up that you don't like, but in the context of that reading, it makes sense to you. So in that moment, you make friends with that card. And it comes with use. It comes from like having a relationship with your decks. It comes with familiarity with your tarot decks and, learning tarot in general. So sometimes you can get past those cards that you hate, So if you are looking for a perfect deck, I mean, if you're being really picky and you're watching a bunch of tarot deck walkthroughs and you're just waiting to find one deck to rule them all, and that's when you're going to hit the purchase button. Dude, I admire that so much. Go you. But if you're doing it in the sense that I was doing it, which was buying all the decks and feeling like at some point I'm going to hit upon the one that has 100% cards that I love, I just don't think that's going to happen. I think you're always going to have those cards that you don't like or those cards that don't really fit. And you will eventually have to make peace with them or not if you find out like you just can't get past a certain thing, if it's a deal breaker for you. We also have I just love decks with mythological creatures, so I love that like with Shadowscapes you get fairies and dragons and mermaids, primarily those three. And really the only mythological creature you get, I mean, you do get a few angels, I guess, in Darkwood, but mostly it's just vampires that are the mythological creature in Darkwood. It's more of a nature-based deck. Really, the vampires are the only creatures that... It's just very earthy. Darkwood is very earthy. And that's an element that's really, it's missing in my chart. It's missing in my life. I really don't have a lot of practicality in my life. So, Darkwood Tarot is actually great for me. This is like my favorite Seven of Pentacles card ever. Look at her. I want to be her. I love this one too, though. This one kind of confuses me just because it reminds me so much of the Seven of Pentacles thematically, just in general, but also specifically it reminds me of the Seven of Pentacles from Shadowscapes. So like on first glance, still, as much as I've used Darkwood, still on first glance I see the Eight of Pentacles and I think it's the Seven. This one is one of the only, like, it's probably, one of 3 cards in all of Shadowscapes that I really don't get. I mean, I get it in the sense that, like, hey, the snail's here. And in fact, I think this is the first time I've actually made that connection. The snail is here. So that's how you know it's the Nine of Pentacles. Besides the title, of course, but... And yeah, she's playing her, like, her earth piano, her garden piano. It's become a part of the earth, but it still works. Or she's just enjoying the weird sound that it makes now that it has a tree growing through it. So, I mean, I get it as a concept, I guess, but again, it's just one of those cards that, like, a lot is happening with that card. I really love when Ten of Pentacles cards just have a tree. And if you look closely with this card, you get all these little mother and daughter energies, or baby and mama, baby and parent. You got a cat family here. You've got 2 ravens. You've got bats, spiders. It's probably something else that I'm not seeing. It's just when I smudged the card when I was edging them red. This is technically my backup copy of Darkwood, but it's the one that's in order. Because this was the first copy I got, and I edged it in red, and I like it in red, but I also just, because it bled so badly onto the cards, I just regretted it. So I got another copy at one point to edge it in green. And because I was doing like an art piece with all the imagery from the guidebook, and I didn't want to destroy my own guidebook. This is like my favorite Knight of Pentacles. I just love how he really, to me, looks like he's very patient. And this is my favorite Queen of Pentacles because she looks like poison ivy. That's really the whole reason. I love it. But she's pretty rad too. Tree Woman. And I love him because he just looks so fucking solid, right? I mean, he's literally a tree. We've got these gorgeous dragons and things. I would like to spend a little bit more time with Shadowscapes because I have that sort of feeling about it that it's a harsh deck, it's difficult to understand. I think it's just one of those slow burn decks for me that like I just wasn't totally ready for it when I first got it. But it wasn't like one of those things where I just feel like I don't know. I don't know. I think whenever you get a tarot deck, like, there's a different feeling when it's like, well, I'm not totally ready for this versus I'm never going to be ready for this. Let's move it on, I guess you don't always know that right away, but it's definitely a different feeling. It's definitely something that I'm like learning to hone in on, which is, yeah, just a part of my process in general. Since a lot of you guys have probably recently discovered my channel because of that tarot deck capitalism video that just kind of got big. I am still kind of in it with that whole situation. Like, I haven't really acquired any new decks recently, and I don't really plan to. I have a couple, like 2 or 3 that I've added to my wish list, my Amazon wish list, in the last couple of weeks, but they're not something, it's just kind of like I'm thinking about it for my birthday. My birthday's in October, and I have them on there in case somebody wants to buy me a birthday gift. But I'm not actually like trying to pull the trigger on anything right now. And I'm happy with that. I'm glad that that's what I'm doing right now. And I'm thinking about, let me know your thoughts on this, because this has been a topic that has kind of been thrown around, particularly with my matrons and patrons, where we're just sort of like, because this seems to be, I mean, to me, it feels like a collective thing that we're all going through, but it's probably just because the people that are being drawn to me right now, the reason that they're being drawn to me is because they happen to be in this sort of space. So if you are one of those people that's sort of feeling like maybe it's time for a depth year, maybe it's time to like really dig even deeper into like why we collect tarot decks, like blah, 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 that kind of thing. I do think I'm probably going to do a depth year in 2022. Like, for me, my time horizon isn't that long. So which is a concept that if it doesn't sound familiar to you, you're not alone. It's time horizon is particularly when talking about like someone that has trauma brain. versus someone who doesn't. If you're comparing the brain of someone that's been through a lot of trauma in their life versus someone who hasn't, the person that hasn't, which is typically someone that's more affluent in class, someone that hasn't had a lot of like, particularly, this is related to poverty, like there's a lot of trauma surrounding people that have less resources, as I'm sure you can imagine. But one of the ways that manifests in your brain is that if you are a person that has grown up poor and or you have a lot of trauma in your past, your time horizon is extremely short. So what that means is, like, for example, someone who is experiencing homelessness and habitually has experienced homelessness throughout their life. They're in survival mode so much, just like all the time, a lot of them, most of them, that their time horizon, how far they can see into the future, is like a day, 2 days, a week. It's very short. Like, the decisions that they make may seem like hard to understand, are really hard to understand for people, particularly that have like time horizons in the number of years. Like this, I mean, I'm somewhere in the middle. Like, I can think about things like a week or two in the future, but I won't plan for things that far out. Like, my time horizon hovers at around, like, conceptually, I can see that I will be around in 2022, and I'm already thinking about a depth year, but actually like nailing down the details is just not going to be possible for me quite yet. Which is just like a really long explanation for, I just think that concept is super fascinating in the sense that, like, having that knowledge of what a time horizon is, I think really helps people understand one another better. So that, if you are talking to someone, I had this happen recently where my nephew had just gotten a job and it wasn't working for him. And it was like his first job, and he quit within like 24 hours. I think he quit during his first shift, which I totally see myself in that, because I did that so many times when I was his age. I would just like get a job, and then the concept of having a job, and anyway. But I remember my aunt was sort of telling him something along the lines of, give it a month, just give it a month. And I was thinking, do you know how long a month is for my nephew, who, there's a huge like class difference between those two people in my family. And there's also just, age. Like, when you're 16 and you've had, kind of a traumatic upbringing so far in your life, sticking with a job for a month, like, that's not something that you can even, like, if somebody said that to me at that age, I'd be like, fuck you, what is a month? That's the longest time ever. Like, if you're going to like impress upon someone a sort of like give it a little bit longer of a try kind of situation, like, maybe say, give it 2 days, give it 3 days, like, you have to meet someone where they are. And anyway, I don't know why I started talking about fucking time horizons at the end of this unfair comparisons, but y'all know I'm not really here for just doing a quick flip through of a couple of decks. Like, I'm here for talking about deep shit. What was it? What's my new tagline? Making up shit in my closet. Thanks for being here for it. Bye.